Hello there, and welcome back to the Disc Connected. It is Friday, October 14th, 2022, which means it is the official release date of Halloween Ends, the third installment in the David Gordon Green trilogy. And I've not seen it yet, but I think it's a pretty good time to discuss the Halloween franchise and rank everything as they lie before I go and see Halloween Ends. Let's get into it. So I have told the story quite a few times on this channel and some other podcasts and a few other places that Halloween is the original movie that got me into horror films. I'd seen a few prior to that, like Child's Play and Carrie, and probably a couple more, but I don't remember them at this point. But it was when I was 8 years old that I watched Halloween for the first time, and it genuinely changed my life. I am here loving cult films because I saw the original Halloween film. And at 8 years old, my parents decided it was a good time for me to watch it with them, and they reported to me afterwards that I'd spent the entire film fully locked, like not moving, all limbs extended to their absolute extreme length that I possibly could without blinking, flinching, just terrified. Looking back, that's pretty funny because I have no idea why. It's overall not as scary of a film as I remember, but I was 8 years old, so that kind of makes sense. After the movie was over, my dad bet me $5 that I wouldn't go run and touch our back fence and then run back to our house. Now, normally that wouldn't seem that bad, but the way our house was built and set up, we had our house, a little bit of a path, and then our garage was separated. And then you couldn't see the back fence because the garage was in the way. So it's actually like a real jaunt to go to our back fence and come back. And we didn't live in a great area. We lived on a corner house of a busy road. There were multiple times where we had, homeless people walking back in the alley behind our house. I just said, you know what? Fuck this, I can't do it. So decided I couldn't do it. Laughed, said no, and he of course laughed at me and basically said I was a sissy for not being able to do it. I was all right with it. I was 8 years old. I was fine being the sissy that couldn't go touch my back fence. Now looking back, I appreciate that moment. It gave me this love of horror, this love of feeling terrified, this love of feeling emotions due to a film, and I'm grateful that I was able to experience that at that age and can look forward to what I want to look forward to in film to attempt to feel things like that again. But as for the entire franchise, this is an oddball franchise to me. I love Halloween. I love the idea of Michael Myers. I don't love every film in this series as much as I love, the recent Nightmare on Elm Street films series that I've ranked on here. I genuinely love most of those movies. Freddy's Dead is kind of bad, but the rest are really enjoyable. And even Freddy's Dead, it could have been a lot worse. I'd watch that over multiple of these Halloween sequels, but I'm still a big fan of all of these. I got to be honest. I like them. I like the lore, and I'm really kind of nervous about how I'm going to rank these because I've never done this before. I'm doing this organically with you all on camera for the first time. So let's dive into it. Let me start ranking my Halloween franchise list, top to bottom, starting with 1978's Halloween, the very first one. I don't think this is a shocker to anybody. I think that this is an S tier film. It is wonderfully made. John Carpenter, literally the GOAT. Incredible music, incredible acting, great storyline, just an all around perfect combination of what I want to feel in a movie. And it's so good. Looking back now, it doesn't age perfectly. It's not one that is terrifying in 2022 or anything like that. But there are certain scenes that I am still in love with the cinematography. And by the way, the new Scream Factory 4K that was released last year, wonderful way to watch this movie. It is absolutely worth the price, but it is so good to look back on a franchise like this and see where it got started and witness everything that would evolve throughout the years to it's 2022, which is 44 years later, and we're about to get the last entry into this timeline of films. And I'm just so glad that I could see everything evolving that way. So let's go ahead and actually throw it up on the list. Halloween 1978 is an S tier film. All right, the next one, Halloween 2 from 1981. This is essentially Halloween 1.5. You would think that it would be very difficult to follow it up, and I'm sure it was. Overall, I think they were extremely successful. I don't think it's quite an S tier film, but I think that it's scary. I think it's actually a little more brutal. I think that the acting is still very good. I like that we get to see a true continuation from the first film to the second film, and if you watch them back to back, it feels fairly cohesive. Uh, I think it's done in a way that I appreciate so much more looking back on this franchise, because those first two just, they have a heart that a lot of the others do not have. So Halloween 2 from 1981 gets an A tier from me. Halloween 3 Season of the Witch. This is a very cliche story at this point. This gets a wide spectrum of results, whether this is, universally panned like it was for so long, or even though it doesn't include Michael Myers, this is still like one of the best films in the entire franchise. And I won't necessarily disagree with that. I think it's very good. And overall, for the feeling and the theme of Halloween that it really gives off, I agree. I think that this is an S tier film. I think that this is not quite as good as the first movie. In fact, I think it's quite a bit worse, but only because that first film is so damn iconic and has John Carpenter over every aspect of it. For Halloween 3, I think the cast is fantastic. They do an overall really great job of acting. I think that some of the effects in this are really great, especially like when the masks in that one scene in that small room that you all know, because I'm sure you all have seen this, the effects of them actually taking a hold of the kids, really kind of brutal and great. I love that. It's overall just a really good Halloween film, genuinely holiday centric Halloween film, and I love that about it. 1988's Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers. Obviously, they had to call it The Return of Michael Myers because there was no Michael Myers in part 3. This is where, to me, everything starts to fall apart. And primarily, I feel like that's because they try to go there with the plot. The fact that we get Danielle Harris for the first time, great. I think she gives a legendary performance as a child in this movie. But the fact that we have to make everybody start to be related to each other, and it's their niece and blah, 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 like that's where it starts to fall apart and lose a lot of the heart in the mystery that we had for the first couple of films with Michael Myers. He was just this giant entity, and now that we have this tangible bloodline to grab onto, I think it lost a lot of that power. However, I think this movie's still a lot of damn fun. I don't think it's a failure on any level. I think that it's genuinely enjoyable to watch. And so because of that, this is going to land solidly in the B tier for me. I think it's nowhere near as good as the films above it, but it's still one that I can look back on fondly. 1989's The Revenge of Michael Myers. This is Halloween 5, unfortunately, really starting to lose ground. I am not a big fan of this one. I'm glad that we get Danielle Harris back. She does very well again, even though now a large part of this, she is mute entirely. We start to see the Thorn storyline coming into play here, which is always odd. And I always kind of wish they went somewhere with it, but alas, we're just sitting here knowing that it exists yet doesn't exist in this new timeline. I am happy to see some of the performances in this. The fact that Donald Pleasance is still doing it and he's unhinged beyond belief is a lot of fun. However, it's just very clearly a far cry from what it used to be in this series. So Halloween 5 is going to fall in C tier. It is not great. It's actually pretty rough overall in terms of quality, but it's still a very enjoyable watch. Halloween 6 from 1995, called The Curse of Michael Myers, and this is where it just goes completely bonkers. We have this whole cult of Thorn playing an actual plot line. Again, I wish we got a lot more out of this, and I think it'd be really cool if a modern film all of a sudden displayed the Thorn tattoo on somebody else and put it in the same universe somehow. I think that'd be really cool, like twist at the end of a movie. Anyways, that'll probably never happen. But um, obviously, obviously, for this one, we are simply talking about the producer's cut. The theatrical cut is way worse than the producer's cut. Overall, though, this is the Paul Rudd show. This is a film that puts him front and center the same year that he put out Clueless. I mean, that's a great 1-2 punch for Paul Rudd fans. This is a better movie than 4 and 5. I think it's one that is a lot more successful. No more Danielle Harris, but it is a movie that goes there. Still has Loomis, played by Donald Pleasance. Still has this just overall gritty feeling, and it's one that is a definite improvement, but still not amazing. For me, this is a solid B tier film. However, I think it's leagues better than Halloween 4, so we're going to put it at the top of B tier. All right, this is where fans really start to get divided. So Halloween H2O, in other words, Halloween H20. This is 20 years later after the first one, so we're in 1998. Jamie Lee Curtis is back. Jamie Lee Curtis is here with her mom, Janet Lee, which is pretty damn cool. We got LL Cool J. This is wild overall. Josh Hartnett sporting his faculty haircut. I nostalgically, I love this movie. I think that it is a fantastic version of what they did to continue the story. I don't think it ended very well, and I think it got very messy, but I personally have to rank this quite a bit higher than a lot of the other sequels. This is going to go up to a solid A tier. It's nowhere near as good as Halloween 2, but it is not this absolute awful movie compared to some of these others. I think that the hot takes are actually going to come later in this as I discuss them, but this one is it's a Halloween franchise film overall. It's not great. It's not going to have a clear storyline. It's not going to make a lot of sense with the rest of the lore, but it's kind of fun as hell. All right, 4 years after Halloween H2O, we are back for Halloween Resurrection, and we are stuck with Busta Rhymes, and Jamie Lee Curtis is back, but not for very long. Jamie Lee Curtis dies very early in this film, and that's where it starts to lose me. This movie, in my opinion, is, spoiler a little bit, I guess, for the next couple minutes, the absolute worst of this franchise. I think that the sad thing about that is this has a lot of really interesting ideas. I think that the whole CCTV aspect of recording on the inside and having this van outside is really cool. I think going a little bit meta with like the reality show aspect is kind of a cool, innovative touch for that time. And then they just sort of shit all over it. Like, obviously, we can make fun of Busta Rhymes all day long in this movie, but it's not even worth that. It is a movie that has really cool ideas and just doesn't get to that line, unfortunately. So for me, this is going to be a C tier, and it is going to be at the very bottom. I do think it's still a competent enough film. I enjoy it quite a bit, but it's just the worst overall, period. But then a young filmmaker 5 years later gets a chance at his own version of Halloween, and they bring in Rob Zombie. Now, a lot of people hate Rob Zombie's take on Halloween, and I completely understand that. It gives a backstory to a character that we feel like we don't really want or need a backstory for. But I got to be honest, I'm here for it. I kind of love Rob Zombie's movies, both of them. You'll hear more about part 2 in just a moment. I think that this movie is very well made. I think that the dialogue is classic Rob Zombie dialogue in that it is very, very bad. That being said, this isn't a movie made for dialogue. This is a movie made about an intimidating serial killer, essentially, just going fucking insane. And Rob Zombie brings that to this entire franchise. So this movie is a lot better than people make it out to be. I do think that it is an A tier film. I'm going to put it solidly in the middle of my A tier. But overall, I do think it's very good. Just overall, a very, very good movie. I love the acting in this. I don't even mind Sherry Moon Zombie being in it. I think that it's well made. I think that it is good, and people need to give it another chance. But speaking of giving things another chance, I'm shocked the studio gave Rob Zombie another chance after the response to his first film. And in 2009, we get a sequel, Halloween 2 by Rob Zombie, and he loses his mind. Absolutely. I mean, we see white horses, we see Michael Myers going out to parties by a barn. We see Sherry Moon Zombie just going fucking insane. We see all of this random stuff happening, and the sequel is kind of incredible. Looking back nowadays, there is so much more to unpack in this movie, and if people just separated it from the franchise, I think more people would understand that it's kind of great. It is, I think, the most underappreciated film in this entire franchise. I think it's very, very good overall. I think it's one that over time I'm appreciating more and not less. And for a lot of these other movies, I can't say that. A lot of these other ones, they are falling in terms of my appreciation. So this one is going straight to the A tier for me, but kind of a possibly spicy take. It's even going above Rob Zombie's Halloween 1. This is the second best A tier film in this entire franchise, I think. It is great. That is until we get to 2018, because Halloween 2018 really, really takes it up a notch and continues the story from 1978 in a way that we never thought we were going to get. David Gordon Green comes in, erases the rest of the mythology, makes some jokes about it along the way, makes a movie that is brutal and really keeping with the lore of the original one, but also just successful on nearly every level. So this movie, the moment I saw it, it jumped immediately into the A tier. And with this one, I've watched it a couple times since 2018, and it's actually gone up in my appreciation. So this one was going to be about the middle of the A tier, and it has jumped up to the top of the A tier for me. I think that this is one that is going to be looked at as possibly the best in the trilogy. It depends on what Ends is, but according to early reviews, Ends is going to be pretty terrible if I can trust the people that I am seeing post reviews. Either way, I think this is a solid place, and David Gordon Green had a great foundation for a trilogy. But on that trilogy, then we get 2021's Halloween Kills. Now, when you announce a trilogy of films, and the last one is called Halloween Ends, the second one is guaranteed to be treated as a bridge film. It is something connecting the first story to the third story, and we have this weird middle section that has no real stakes because Laurie has to be there at the end, and Michael has to be there at the end, and you don't want to kill off the other main characters because they have to be there at the end. So in the meantime, you're stuck with this weird transitional story. That being said, it's still pretty damn good. It's better than most of the other sequels in this franchise. It is a movie that has great kills. It has really good brutality in terms of, that park scene where there's the death in the car and then on the swings and then the walking and blah, blah, blah. All of that is really well done. That being said, this movie has the worst dialogue in the entire franchise, even worse than the Rob Zombie films, and I don't understand it. The biggest complaint you're going to see is all regarding the term "evil dies tonight," and I agree, it's awful. However, it's also a Halloween franchise sequel that you just need to turn off your brain and realize that it's a lot of fun, which means I put this at the top of the B tier. And this is it, final ranking. I think that some of these are going to be pretty spicy, and a lot of you are probably going to disagree. But overall, I genuinely have found myself leaning towards this exact feeling as I go back and look at these sequels for a long, long time. My Letterboxd scores don't really reflect this because they are based on my first time watch, and overall, some have gone up, some have gone down, and time has led to weird feelings looking back on the Halloween franchise. But what about you? What do you think? I know that you disagree with me on at least one or maybe 7 of these. Share with me in the comments. And if you like to have discussions like this, maybe consider joining our Patreon, where we have our Discord, where we can discuss these films all day long and talk about why I'm an absolute idiot for enjoying Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. I know you want to discuss it. I hope to see you in there. I hope that you've enjoyed this, and I hope that you will come back and watch more movies for the month of October in 2022, because I got more horror coming your way. In the meantime, thanks for watching. From one collector to all of you, have a good night.